Hello everyone! Today I am going to be reviewing the sophomore album by English-Welsh artist Marina and the Diamonds, or Marina Diamandis. This album is titled Electra Heart, and it was released on April 27th, 2012. I have already reviewed her third studio album, Fruit, on this channel, and I had great things to say about it, so I highly recommend you check out in the description. I'll link to that review, any Marina and the Diamonds fans here. And now let's talk about her second album, which was her most commercially successful album, but it's not necessarily the same kind of vibe and aesthetic that I really am interested in for Marina. I think it's a great experiment as an album, as a product. I could sense there was definitely a bit of a label push. She's working with some really big producers like Stargate, Greg Kurstin, and Dr. Luke, sadly. But again, this was way back in 2012. Everyone was working with Dr. Luke. You can't blame her. And so we get the album, or the character more so, of Electra Heart, as Electra Heart, as she is described, is an actual character that she created as to sort of embody this sort of Greek tragedy of the American dream, this femme fatale figure who is at once very fearless and very provocative and at the same time very sensitive and feminine. She employed different aspects of femininity and this sort of pinup doll Primadonna figure that she has a song named after into different categories. And she split up this album into chapters that she released as videos. So this was kind of a visual album to some extent, although it was never really exactly planned to be the way it was. She sort of started out not necessarily planning for this to be an album. It was going to be like a side project that wasn't even going to be released under her main name, Marina and the Diamonds, but her label was pushing her to actually make this a studio album. So even though she'd released a lot of singles well in advance before this album came out, she was sort of working on it sporadically, and then it all kind of came together. And she was very much inspired by Tumblr aesthetic. She wanted to take photos of herself all over the country in different vintage, a lot of 60s and 70s glamour influences here. She wanted a lot of that Marilyn Monroe aesthetic to come into the photographs that she took to create different characters. It's a very interesting idea for a project, and it's not really something I knew much about. I wasn't following Marina's career when this album came out. I jumped on board during the Fruit era. So coming back and looking back at Marina's album Electra Heart, looking at it through the lens of Fruit, it's almost like a completely different artist, almost. And then if you look at the Family Jewels, which was a much more sort of indie alternative record, it's like three different people have released three different albums. She's not the only artist to do this. She reminds me a lot of Nelly Furtado. Nelly Furtado, her Loose album is a lot like Marina's Electra Heart. Loose is this very commercial product. It's very sexual. It's very self-asserting. It's not nearly as docile or alternative as her other works. And so I view Marina and the Diamonds and Nelly Furtado's careers in similar ways, in which they don't necessarily have a set scheme. They just sort of create what they want to create, and their albums may sound completely different, but you can still find all those through lines. And I do find through lines between Fruit and Electra Heart. Now, I will confess, I have not heard much at all of the Family Jewels yet, and I do plan on reviewing that album, so stick around on this channel because I will be reviewing that in the future. I've only heard I Am Not a Robot. I do need to dig into the Family Jewels. I just am not there yet. I'm going backwards in her career. I have definitely some good things to say about Electra Heart, but I will say this, it's not Fruit for me. There are a lot of songs on this record that just don't cut it for me, and unfortunately that's largely due to the production elements. A lot of it feels very much like it's trying to chase trends, especially for EDM dubstep. There's one song, that Lies, that really follows that, and it's just a little bit painful for me now. It feels too commercial, and I see that Marina now, looking back, maybe views, she calls it a very cringe record. Not necessarily that it's bad, but she's making it almost over the top and overdone on purpose. Similar to how Lady Gaga's The Fame album was so overblown, you know, all about materialistic aesthetics to some extent, to the point where you knew it wasn't necessarily true. It was more kind of like a theme that she was playing around with, having fun with. It wasn't necessarily representative of the person she was deep down. This is the same thing for Marina. You know, she's came up with this character that wears the hair in a certain way and is this figure, and it's inspired by, you know, stories of women all throughout, you know, the housewife, the Madonna, Marilyn Monroe figures in the music industry, like sex vixens, and also, you know, like girls online, you know, teenagers. It's inspired by internet culture, all of these things. So let's dive right into this record. I'm gonna just start off by saying that the lead song off of this record, Bubblegum Bitch, is definitely not a highlight for me. I think the song fails mainly because of the title. I hate to say that. I don't have a problem with people cursing, and I don't have a problem with expletives, but I feel as though this persona is trying a little bit too hard. And then the problem is the production isn't really doing enough to make me like want to listen to it like repetitively. It's very pop, but it's almost obnoxiously pop, and it feels very fake. I don't for 1 minute believe that Marina as a person really is this person. She may be exploiting the idea of it and subverting it, and I do believe that she is doing that, and that's where this album is effective. But I do feel a divorce in that persona, and it's just not, when coming from Fruit, I don't vibe with it, and I don't really buy the whole image and aesthetic, because I know that's not really who Marina is. And I think I look at it as just kind of immature, but I don't see it as like it's necessarily bad. It's just artists create things in their career and then they move on and they make better things. And that's just how I view this opening song. Primadonna picks things up in the right way for me. This is the flagship song of this record. It's the thesis statement of what she's trying to get at and to subvert. It has the very fun music video where she's dressed up in all of these different characters that embody the prima donna figure. This is the woman that every girl wants to be growing up. This is that almost fake, but it's so good sort of lifestyle. And I think she celebrates it in this very innocent and girly way, but at the same time with this sincerity. It's very Katy Perry. She was dubbed the British Katy Perry at this time. It's an easy thing to consider. It's got the same propulsing beat from like One of the Boys, like Katy Perry's first album. It feels very infectious like that, very bubblegum, and served with a wink and some sass, because that's what she is delivering on this. It's definitely not meant to be taken seriously as she sings, you know, Prima Donna Girl, the Rise and the Fall, hearkening to, you know, great talents like Marilyn Monroe or, you know, Princess Diana, these girls who are put on these pedestals and then sometimes meet tragic ends. It's implying this sort of theme and narrative of fame as self-destructive. And so ultimately it's a cautionary tale, but it's also fun and it's celebratory. I love the image of her on the bike pedaling really fast towards the end. It's sort of like, I'm trying so hard and I'm gonna burn myself out. I get that sort of image from it. It's like it's like capitalistic in a way. And you're climbing so high up this ladder, but you're losing yourself to some extent, and you're losing your mind a little bit. And there is a little bit of that, like playful, like I'm going crazy, but I'm pretty and I'm wearing more makeup. And so I really see her poking fun at the system with songs like these, and at the same time making undeniably fun, catchy pop songs. And where Bubblegum Bitch is just a little bit too generic for my tastes, this has a nice sort of a guitar backing that makes it feel a little bit more propulsive, and I can more groove to it. Next track, Lies, we finally get that jaded post-breakup revelatory sort of song that feels very anthemic. Now, I mentioned I wasn't crazy about the production, and the truth is I don't like the production. It's a little bit generic for my taste, but I do love the melody line and her vocals. And I do think there's some beautiful lyrics. You only ever touch me in the dark. Only if we're drinking can you see my spark. And only in the evening could you give yourself to me, 'cause the night is your woman and she'll set you free. That's so true of so many relationships, so many men who they're just in it for the fun, and they're just in it when they're not sober, and when the sun is down. And in the cold light of day, there's really nothing there. It's all just lies. And so in the imagery for the video, you know, she's walking away. She's putting her foot down. She's dejectedly moving on from this heartbreaker. Home Wrecker. This is a song where she is unapologetically accepting this moniker or this title and running with it. There's a line that perfectly symbolizes what she means by saying, I guess you could say that my life's a mess, but I'm still looking pretty in this dress. I'm the image of deception. There's some spoken word. The verses are basically spoken word, and it's very ominous and dramatic. And it feels borderline cheesy, but I definitely am here for it. The rhymes are a little generic, and I would have maybe love to see, especially in the bridge where we're like really, really focused on her vocals, on what she is saying. Like, I mean, we are like forced to be ear to ear with what she is saying. It's you know, it's a little bit cliched. When everything is life and death, you may feel like there's nothing left. Instead of love and trust and laughter, what you get is happy never after. But deep down, all you want is love, the pure kind we all dream of, but we cannot escape the past, so you and I will never last. This is the opposite of a happy ending, and that's basically the story that she is telling through so many of these songs. That fairy tale wedding, yeah, it's not gonna happen. It's a false idol. And I don't belong to anyone. She sings it in such pain and yet such a celebratory way at the same time in the pre-hook, which is actually quite brilliant. I love that aspect of this song. The chorus itself gets a little monotonous. Her vocals are not really like going anywhere, and it's a little bit just too direct for me. But at the same time, I don't dislike it. It's just, I think that the pre-hook and the verses are a little bit more interesting. Girls and their curls and their gourmet vomit. Pretty clever there. Boys and their toys and their 6-inch rockets. Well, we all know what she's talking about there. We're all very lovely, so we get to know each other as we stop becoming friends and we start becoming lovers. And remember, every boyfriend is the one until otherwise proven. Very, very true. The good are never easy, the easy never good. And loving never happens like you think it really should. I mean, she's spitting truth. That's undeniable here. Starring Role is one of the highlight songs on this record. It is a beautiful, almost tear-jerking, sweeping anthemic track that's a mix of pop and a mix of something else that just feels very surround sound. This song is about being basically a side piece, or not being the starring role in someone's heart and in someone's life. I'd rather walk alone than be a supporting role if I can't get the starring role. This is so important to remember that, you know, no one is worth being a supporting role in someone's life. And when it comes to love, you know, you're either the starring role in that person's life, or you both agree that that's not how you want to do the relationship. But it can't be a one-way thing. You can't be their supporting role, and yet to you, they're your starring role. That's not a healthy relationship. And so the breakdown, sort of the inevitable breakup that's to come, is hinted at in the very melancholic way she addresses this in this song, with the soaring melody and the sweeping production, and the chime-like backing instrumental. It's a beautiful track. Similar to this is The State of Dreaming. Now, this feels like one time in the moment where the record where you really sense her being a little bit more introspective, and looking within herself instead of just like jadedly pointing out what's going on in the world. I use the word jaded a lot in a lot of my reviews. There's a lot of words I use a lot in a lot of my reviews, like the words and like. Anyway, but yes, jaded definitely summarizes a lot of this album. But State of Dreaming is different. Millions of girls float on their own quote, living on their last hope. I live my life inside a dream, only waking when I sleep. I would sell my sorry soul if I could have it all. My life is a play. I've been living in a state of dreaming, living in a make-believe land. They don't really know who I am behind the makeup and the facade. It's a lot like, you know, that song Lucky by Britney Spears. It's a similar sort of aesthetic, except this one's a little bit more soulful, I think. But it's the same kind of thing, you know, they just see the pretty image that either I put out for them or that the media does. But also, I'm living a life that's not really mine. And I can sense that maybe this song was crafted in part due to a specific point in Marina's life, possibly when she was crafting this record. And so looking back, I think this song is one of the more self-aware songs on the record. And it's definitely more in the vein of Fruit. This song and one other song on this record called Hypocrates, these are two of my favorite songs on this album, and they definitely more fit the style and vibe of the Fruit era. Power and control. This is another big diva moment on this record. I actually love this song. I think it works. The production, the ambiance, the sincerity, the directness. I love as she sings "and I am weak," and the melody line just sort of collapses in on itself. You can tell the sort of madness is there. And ultimately, that is what a relationship can be. It is a mad power play between a man and a woman, and this sort of one wanting to dominate the other, and it can end in tragedy. So in some ways, this song is a lot about domestic abuse, but it's about both sides abusing one another to some extent. This is about the seedier sides of relationships. I'm gonna make you fall. Women and men, we are the same, but love will always be a game, a human vulnerability. That's such a smart and wise way to put it. I mean, a lot of people, and rightly so, will view that men tend to want to dominate the woman in a relationship. And unfortunately, sadly, that is the truth, and misogyny is very true and exists. But this song isn't just taking aim at misogyny, it's taking aim at, well, if it is taking aim at misogyny, it's taking aim at the whole construct of love and marriage. I think that this song is truly going after marriage because power is sort of inherently imbued into marriage, at least the construct of marriage that we're used to in this life, where there's this contract that the state has called us to be stuck together. And that is a power construct of its own, and it ultimately turns pawns of the two individuals involved. And sometimes the marriage is the true reason why the two pawns then become violent towards one another. And yes, women can fall for this too, just as much as men. She says that we are the same deep down, we both want to control each other. There is the truth to that. I mean, you know, we're all bad people sometimes, you know? I mean, we can't just ignore the fact that it's in human nature for us to want to act certain ways in love and also in power. And it's not just specifically a male thing, although it is hyper concentrated in that area for sure. This song isn't necessarily disputing that. But I think it's a very smart pop song that is really fun to dance to, and it's definitely a bit sexier, which I like, but it's not plotting like, again, like some of the other songs on this record, like Bubblegum Bitch are. I can definitely get behind this one as well. Eternal game of tug of war. Will it ever end? This character is really burnt out with love, isn't she? So keep in mind, I'm going through the US Standard Edition. That's just the edition I'm going through. So the next track on that version is Sex Yeah. I'm not so crazy about this song melodically. The repetitive way she sort of shouts, it feels a little bit not fully formed as a song, a little bit more demo. But it's speaking about to question things, and it's speaking about questioning commerciability and commercial products that are sold to you, and also talking about how sex is sold. It's like the main item on every menu in like everything in the world, and how it's like thrust down your throats basically from a young age. So it's very important and very poignant and important to realize. And so for that, it's an important sort of like message song, but beyond that, it's not that memorable. Teen Idol. Now this is a really interesting song. Note it is spelling idol like I am idle right now, as in I'm not busy. Not spelled like idol as in idol worship, which doesn't really make a lot of sense at first, because I really thought the song was about like teen idols, like Britney Spears, for example, or something like that. But when she spells it this way, it's sort of more like the idol teen, like, I don't know where I'm going, I'm floating, I don't know who I am. This song reeks of personal insecurity. It's basically, I can see it as Marina talking about her younger self, but also relating to just teenagers in general and like internet and Tumblr sad girl culture. This song is very Lana Del Rey, by the way. It's the closest she gets really to Lana's style and image and aesthetic. I don't know if it's necessarily quite Lana, Lana does something right that maybe this song doesn't quite pick up on. Maybe it's because of the beat. It's like a little bit less hip hop and it's a little bit more just like standard Greg Kurstin production. But I feel like Katy Perry, but the lyrics are the really interesting part. Instead of spending all my time burning up a Bible, feeling super, super suicidal, I wish I had been a teen idol. Wish I'd been a prom queen fighting for the title instead of being 16 and burning up a Bible, as she says. The wasted years, the wasted youth, the pretty lies, the ugly truth. And the day has come where I have died, only to find I've come alive. The cover for the single shows her with like this red Solo cup with her tongue stuck out like, I'm wasted and I don't care anymore. I'm depressed, but I'm going to be a whore and I don't care what you say about it. And this is the imagery that this song is pulling from. And again, whether it's truly how Marina has felt, I'm sure many of us have related and can relate to this sort of feeling of like everything being a lie, and also kind of like hating that you spent so much time buying into the fakeness of like being young and like the lie of prettiness and everything, but at the same time, you saw how the popular kids seemed to just float through life, and you were like, you know, I wish I would have been so nice to have just like lived a lot more carefree, and instead of spending so much time being above my years as a kid, like in high school, I wish I was just out partying more. And that's how I take this song, and for me, as someone who definitely did not party, I mean, I know I'm a guy, but I mean, it's a similar sort of thing, and I definitely can relate to this sort of line of, like, the pretty lies, the ugly truth. You know, the the life that society says I should lead because I see it, in everyone in the status quo of, the world, which is like, you gotta be like getting drunk all the time and you've gotta be having sex all the time and being super social and extroverted and like living life a certain way and making all the wrong choices because you're young, right? Well, that's just not who I am, and I don't wanna feel bad about that. Even though society does, it's sorta like society is, like, saying, "You should feel bad that you weren't a bad person as a kid. You should feel bad that you weren't a fuckboy," and I'm like, "No, I'm glad I'm not." But the truth is people just tend to not, like, pay much attention to the people who they're not the idols, you know? The people who are running the straight and narrow path. Not that I'm straight, but you know what I mean. Like it's a tough, thing to kind of reconcile, and that's what this song is doing, and I think a very brilliant and clever way. It's very relatable. Come to the very beautiful, sparse, and almost haunting track, Valley of the Dolls. This song feels forlorn, very depressed and downtrodden. And it's speaking of identity, of an identity crisis. Born with a void, hard to destroy with love or hope. Built with a heart broken from the start, and now I die slow. In the valley of the dolls we sleep. Got a hole inside of me, living with identities that do not belong to me. Pick a personality for free when you feel like nobody. I take it as like that realization moment when you have taken this persona so far, but it's not really who you really are, and you're sort of just like owning up to it, but you want to restart. And so you lay to rest this personality, this figurine that wasn't really you, but that you tried on. And then you maybe pick up another personality and you try that on for size. I mean, I view this Valley of the Dolls as sort of like the Primadonna figure is there, the idol teen is there, all of the homewrecker, all of these characters that she's exploring on this record, they're all there in the Valley of the Dolls, and you can try one on, but that's when you're so sad and depressed that you can't just be yourself. And to really understand and not be depressed about who you are is to not try on any fake masks, is to actually just be who you truly are. And then that's what the hole is inside of you, like that pain is trying to be filled up by all of these fake personalities that aren't really you. So this song is like celebrating the depression of it a little bit. It's not necessarily trying to move on, but at the same time, it is. Hypocrates. I really wanted to talk about this song. So I believe that she's playing upon on the word Socrates by adding hypocrisies as in hypocrite. This is one of the summarier songs, and it's got a very 60s feel to it. You're the lonely one and only body in the world. Who can make me, who can break me down into a young girl? You say that love is not that easy, and that's the lesson that you teach me. So hypocritical, overly cynical, I'm sick and tired of all of your preaching. Who are you to tell me who to be? Yeah, you played the martyr for so long that you can't do anything wrong. Who are you to tell me who to be? Whether she's speaking to someone else or to herself, her own insecurities, this is a very earnest song telling you exactly what it is that you were feeling. And it's very refreshing because it's not so clouded in metaphor of personal identity. It's just literally about like that identity crisis that this album is centralized around now. And at the same time, it's a very like easygoing track to counteract the very kind of direct and sort of darker sort of undertones to the lyrics, which are a bit more like cross. It's like, I'm not happy with you. Who are you to tell me what love is? You're so cynical. I'm so sick of you preaching. I love it. Next track, How to Be a Heartbreaker. Oh boy, the music video for this song. Yeah, I must admit, it's a fun music video. Lots of nice looking guys in there. I'm quite jealous of Marina. This is a very unapologetic track. It's really fun, and I think it, again, very well summarizes the theme for this record. And it also is just a pure poking fun at actual true love. It's very Taylor Swift blank spacey at parts, but this was before blank space, so, it's cool, it's original. like with her the guy's head on the platter, and at least I think I do. It's so Taylor Swift. It's so funny, like at the first time. I mean, it might get a little bit cheesy, but I have nothing bad to say. It's unapologetic fun, and at the same time, it's true as heck. Step 1 and step 2 and step 3 and then step 4 of how to be a heartbreaker. And you know what? It's actually really easy. Everyone does it all the time. Come and join us. We're having so much fun. It's so much fun to be fake and break hearts and wear your heart on your cheek, not on your sleeve. So witty and so smart. As you know, she wears this tattooed heart on her cheek and all the visuals for this era. Very symbolic of a love that is not that permanent. And then it's not that close to your heart. So it's not that true ultimately. And a lot of this record is about what's really is the truth. What is really true love? Is it possible? So it's just a really fun song. I love the guitar backing to it, very summer feeling, and it's a groovy song. And I would definitely love to be in the shower with those guys. Radioactive is a very much more like house club banger styled song. Feels a little bit different from the style of the pop that is in the rest of this record. And I don't hate it, but it's not as memorable to me. Again, it's a little bit like Bubblegum Bitch. There's just something missing, makes it a little bit too generic. But you know, it's a big belting pop dance song, so it's got those formulas in there. And again, it's the same bitter character. Don't mess with me, you know, because my heart is nuclear, as she belts. Lastly, we have Fear and Loathing, one of the most moody and darker tracks on this record, for sure. The music video was one of the first released for this era, which is odd because it's the last song on the album. Maybe it's full circle. And it shows her in front of a mirror, cutting her own hair, and just sort of second-guessing herself. The song is also about like a need to stop feeling so bogged down by hate. Maybe people are here to actually help you, as she sings in the lyrics, not hurt you. There is no crime in being kind. Not everyone is out to screw you over. Maybe they just want to get to know you. Valuable life lesson, people. But, you know, at the same time, you can't blame someone for feeling untrusting. I mean, so many bad things have happened to them. So this song is about wanting to rise up against the hate, to live free and a little bit more trusting of the world, be more open to it. I love the shot of the hair that she's cut, just sort of stuck to her shoulders. It makes me cringe because I know that's so itchy. If anyone's cut their own hair, you know when the hair is on your shoulders, especially if you're wearing clothes, it's like, oh, it's so itchy. But I think it's important that she didn't dust it off because it's the remnants of this, you know, part of her that she was. And so now she's sort of uncomfortable, but she's feeling out like what this new life is going to mean for her. What does change really mean? What does changing your perspective on life really mean? And what does it mean to live a life without fear and loathing? So ultimately, it's a very wise way to sort of send off this record. Ultimately, I think we get a very interesting package here. Very different from Fruit, though there are the seeds of stuff and melodies that we will see revisited on that record. I'm very interested to hear the Family Jewels, as I know it is quite different in sound for her, a lot more indie alternative. And maybe I do like the pop sensibilities of hers. I definitely have an ear for pop, but I'd be really interested to see the contrasts. So ultimately, I don't think it's as strong as Fruit, but maybe that's just because the concept for Fruit, I don't know, there's just something about it. The album Electra Heart has some amazing, amazing songs that I love. And then it just has a lot of songs, or half the songs, that are kind of just, the lyrics are strong, but it doesn't really feel quite there for me. And not as memorable. So it's ultimately a pretty good record, I think. And it's a progression step for her. It was something she had to put out. But ultimately, I think Fruit is a step in the right direction. So let me know in the comments what you think of this record. And like I said, check out my Fruit review, and I will see you in a Family Jewels review at some point in the future. So please like and subscribe to this channel if you want to see that, and if you're new here. I love you guys so much. Thank you all so much for watching. Have a wonderful, blessed day. Bye!